Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Our guest today is Jessica Blasingame, who snuck out of the world of accounting to become a health coach, only to sneak back into the accounting world to offer her health coach peers education, insight, and advice about how to manage their accounts. Jessica reminds us that small business accounting is worlds different than large business accounting, and different again than personal accounting. If your books are what trip you up and give you the bad feelings that make you want to throw in the towel sometimes, Jessica offers welcome advice, trust me. One of the tricks she shares with us that we found most useful is a forecasting exercise she takes her clients through. Truly a financial thought experiment about where the income will come from. Pretty cool. Our show sponsor is Primal Health Coach Institute, an NBHWC-approved health coaching school. This means that our grads can qualify to sit for the national board exam to become a board-certified health coach. You can learn more about this Master Coach certification track at primalhealthcoach.com/mastercoach. While you're on our website, navigate to primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro and learn all about the done-for-you 12-week app-based health coaching program we've put together so that certified health coaches can hit the ground running with an effective and transformational health coaching program for their clients right out the gate. We know that developing program materials and sourcing a client management solution are two of the most daunting hurdles in new coaches' ways. So we made Primal Pro for you. Check it out at primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro. While you're listening, make sure to screen grab your podcast player and tag us in your Instagram stories at Health Coach Radio. And as always, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of our pod can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. It seems like service providers like health coaches have a collective aversion to talking about money, but folks, we have to. To make it easier, we love bringing in guests like Jessica. With all that being said, please give a warm Health Coach Radio welcome to our special guest, Jessica Blasingame.
Hello, Jessica. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Oh, that's great. You know, we love doing this. The podcast is one of the highlights of my week as well, being able to interview. We get to talk to the coolest people. You know, we learn something new all the time. So selfishly, these interviews and things that we do for the benefit of health coaches directly benefits Erin and I too. So thank you for coming on. So tell our audience who Jessica Blasingame is. Give us kind of your backstory, you know, your 5-ish minute history, origin story, we call it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back, not to the beginning of time, but when I started my career in accounting, I was working in corporate accounting. So I worked, for a big audit firm, Deloitte, and then I went and worked for a large utility, and I was doing all kinds of different accounting and, financial planning activities there. And I was pretty much just hating life. It wasn't a good environment for me. I felt really stifled there. I wasn't interested in the work. I didn't feel like I was really really contributing anything towards change. And at the same time, I was starting to have some health problems. So, some chronic issues were kind of peeking their head, and I think that's probably common with a lot of health coaches. They kind of start out because they had a health journey themselves. So that was my experience. And at the time, I was sort of looking for two things. I was looking for a way out of corporate accounting, and I was looking for a way to heal. So I got really interested in nutrition and, learning about different alternative modalities. And I decided to study nutrition, at a distance learning program while I was working my full-time job. So I was doing that. And then I so interested in that, really energized by that work. And so I was figuring out a way that I could start my health coaching practice. And I was just doing it on the side to start. So I would come home at night, take a couple clients, was really loving it, hating what I was doing during the day. And so eventually I made the leap and I was doing health coaching full time. And that was amazing. And I eventually started going back into the corporate world, doing corporate wellness programs. And I got my yoga certification. So I was teaching yoga. And that was all great. And as I was going through that, I started meeting a lot of entrepreneurs that were in the wellness industry mostly. And they would find out about my accounting background and then start asking questions. So they'd be like, hey, I have this tax question, or I need to set up my books. Like, what do I do? So at that time, I was like, what if I did accounting, but in a different way? I can support small business owners. So I'm really helping them run their business, very different than corporate accounting. And I can sort of support these like-minded people that are, super passionate about what they're doing. So that's when I started Beam Financial Group. And it, took me a little time to get up to speed on small business accounting, which is different than corporate accounting. So I was learning QuickBooks, and, I worked for a large integrative medicine practice. And so I was supporting them. So I learned a lot about accounting there, or small business bookkeeping. So I was just getting up to speed, and then I started taking clients. And as soon as I did that, it really started to flow. It was like, open the floodgates. And I think people were resonating with the fact that I have a different background, and I sort of understood their experience in their industry, but I have this finance background as well. So it was kind of a full circle journey, but it worked out well in the end.
I wonder what it is with what do we call ourselves, like heart-centered, service-based entrepreneurs that and I'm just gonna generalize everybody under the same umbrella that I'm going to generalize myself under, which is can be a little head in the sand about money, or maybe that's not the right way of putting it, just disempowered or confused, or I wonder what that is. Do you have a sense of why that is?
Yeah, I think it happens for a lot of reasons. I think it could be sometimes for people, it's like stories they were told when they were growing up, coming from their parents, or maybe their parents never even talked about money with them, or what their financial situation was. Or they were just not taught about money. They weren't taught how to balance a checking account, or how to invest in the stock market, or anything like that. It was just never touched. And I think in general in society, like, money is kind of a taboo topic, and we're kind of shifting away from that now. You see all these, like, talk to your coworkers about what they're getting paid. And that's like a new concept that has come about in just the past couple of years. So I think we're really coming into this era where we're, starting to shine a light on finances, and we all see the value in being more connected to our finances. And so I think that's.
You know what else it might be? Because you tiptoed out of your corporate job. I tiptoed out of my corporate job. I think a lot of people are leaving paychecks.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Right.
When you have a paycheck, it goes in the bank, and you're like, okay, my work here is done.
Yes.
And that whole paradigm changes, and we're just unfamiliar with it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think when you step into the business, running your own business, you're just sort of thrown into it. Like, there's not really a manual that's given to you. And most people aren't taking a small business course, and they're just kind of figuring out on the fly. And there's so much to learn. And a lot of it we're learning trial and error. So, I mean, you're wearing like a million hats and trying to figure it all out. So,
the percentage of people, and I'm not even just speaking to our realm, but the percentage of just the average consumer that has no stinking idea what kind of financial situation they're in is enormous.
Yes, it really is.
It's enormous. And I think you're right. It is not something we're taught. They don't address it in school at all. Like, zero.
Yeah.
Literally, I mean, other than my little 7-year-olds learning what a nickel is and what a quarter is,
right,
and what a dollar is.
Yeah.
There is no class in like high school. Like, this would be phenomenal, making it a mandatory class that people learn basic money management.
Yes.
No one balances a checkbook anymore. I'm guilty of this too, because I have access to my entire account online. Right. But I'm aware of what's in there. I know what to see, to expect, clear, and all that stuff. But the vast majority of people have no stinking clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you try to kind of get your arms around it, it's like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
And so the reason I bring this up is because many people, I think, delay being able to leave that corporate job to move into this because of this insecurity and really not having a strong understanding of where they are. And so we've had a couple guests on getting your arms around kind of where you are right now.
Yeah.
I would love your opinion on how to do that. But most importantly, we were talking before we recorded that one of the things you can bring to the table is to help people forecast for either making that move or making another investment or whatever the decision is. So would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Specifically with thinking about making a move, if you want to start your health coaching full time, I see so many business owners that sometimes they'll even take the leap, but they have so much anxiety about it because they don't really know when they're going to start being profitable, how they're going to support themselves in 5 months. Like there's not really any planning that goes into it. And I think you could do just a simple forecast, just to even if it's written on paper. Like I don't really care how it's done, but it's just putting some of the thought behind, like, how will I make my money? How many clients do I need to take each month? How much will they pay me? So you can at least see kind of how your income will play out over the next year. And then you're starting to think through what expenses will I incur? Do I need insurance? Do I need, will I work with a lawyer to set up my contracts? So you're kind of, it's just a great exercise to start thinking through, like, what cash outflow will I have? What about taxes? I think a lot of business owners jump in without knowing what their tax obligation is going to be like, or what the percentages are even like. So they're not setting aside for taxes or planning that they'll have to pay those taxes, and they think they are going to have more money than they will. So if you do a simple forecast, you can kind of see, like, okay, well, this is the point where I'll start to be profitable and I can cover all my expenses. And so maybe I need to have savings set aside to cover me while I'm not profitable, or maybe I need to get a loan or ask, a family member for some money or something, but you're thinking through it so that that point, and it'll change. It's not like you make a forecast and it'll definitely happen, but at least you're putting some of the thought process behind it. You're just giving a little intention to it. So I think that's a valuable exercise, even just if it's a rough, like, back of the envelope, this is what I'm thinking is going to happen. And you're doing some of the research too to support it.
So what is that exercise? Do you mind giving us a little more detail on kind of what pieces of the puzzle people need to know to even begin to attempt to forecast?
Yeah. So the best place you want to start with a forecast is income. Like I mentioned before, you just want to think, how are you going to generate that income? If you're a health coach, are you going to do one-on-one sessions? Are you going to launch a digital course or have a cleanse or something like that? Are you going to have ebooks that you sell? So when you start out, or even if you're already in business, maybe you're going to add on some services and you're kind of planning for that in the future. So you're just laying out each service offering or each product, and you're starting to think through. And I always just say, like, don't worry about it so much. Just start plugging it in, and you can always tweak it later. But let's just get a picture first. So start saying, okay, I'm going to take, maybe I can reasonably get one client a month as I grow. And then I'm going to, charge $200 an hour. So you start plugging in those real numbers and seeing where that gets you. And then you're plugging it in for each service line or product. And you can see, what are you expected to make each month? And then from there, you want to plug in your expenses, right? So what do you need? Software that you're going to use? Again, like insurance. Are you going to do any advertising or marketing? Maybe think about that. Or you're going to hire a PR firm, or what else? Office expenses, supplies, anything that you think you're going to need. And you can look at some templates. You could even Google it and see, what are the typical expenses for a health coach? I'm sure it's out there. So just, plugging those in, and then you're getting income minus expenses to your profit number. And that's a good starting place. That's good to see first. And then from there, you can kind of tweak. So you can say, okay, well, in this scenario, I'm broke in 2 months. I'm not going to be in business for long. So can I raise my rates a little bit? And can we support that? Or are there some expenses we can cut back here in this plan? Or maybe I'll really drive some marketing so that I can get more clients in the beginning. So it just kind of serves as like a framework that you can work within to experiment. Maybe I think I'm going to need a contractor to support all these clients I'm taking. So let me plug in the cost for that contractor. But so you get to your profit, and then you can also plug in what you want to take out, what you need to take out for taxes. And then you see what you have left over.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
That's a good place to start.
It is, yeah. Do you know what I was thinking is it's so interesting. It's hard to know where like business coaching starts and ends and like financial coaching starts and ends. They do overlap. So imagine like an established coach could come and say, yeah, I'm going to take on 10 clients a month. They're going to pay me $1,000. I'm running a group program. I'm probably going to get 70 people in it. And, can speak to that with having established their business. But a new coach would be absolutely just spitballing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I can get two, maybe. And so to your point, when they look at the numbers and say, well, if I got 2 clients and I charge them $200, I don't have a business. I have a hobby. It's not making any money. And then it's sort of like, do you ever run it? Like, I'd be curious to know the split of coaches you work with that are brand new versus established, because if you got this stuff lined up when you're brand new, that would be amazing, because what I'm learning is it's very hard to now backpedal into the organization of it. But the flip side of that coin is a brand new coach is operating from a great unknown. I don't know how many clients I'm going to have because I don't even know where to get clients.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And I think this is why a lot of people hesitate from even creating a forecast, because they're like, I don't know. I'm going to try to get as many clients as I can, and I'm just going to go, But I think if you put some numbers behind it, at least in a guess, you have some structure to work towards. So if you did plug in like, okay, I really need to get 4 clients a month and they each need to pay me like $1,000 package, and that works for me, I'm happy with that profit, then I'm going to drive towards that 4 number. And if I'm not meeting that 4 number, then I'm going to change something. So maybe my marketing approach isn't working, or maybe I need to get out and do more speaking events, or, maybe I can charge a little bit more. So it just sort of gives you like, it's kind of like visualizing a goal, right? You need to be able to see those goals or you can't get to them. If you can kind of just have an idea, and you can tweak it. I mean, you can keep changing your forecast as you go. You're like, maybe you go for a couple months and you're like, 4 clients is completely unreasonable. I can't get 4 clients. So then you might tweak it down to 3, and maybe you can drop off some expenses, but at least you're kind of working within something that supports you. Do you know what I mean?
That. I do like that. I think that's I actually think that's a nice exercise and we're just sticking with this new coach idea.
Yeah.
Because as we know, and as we've already said, for new coaches, where do I find clients is the biggest, the great unknown.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, pick a number of clients that you think you can get. Pick a random number. Like, let's just get some action going here, because we can hem and haw about it all day long, but let's just pick a number. The other thing too, that I think would unpack from this is if, 2-3 months go by and these 4 clients haven't maybe materialized, then yes, you think through, well, what can I do to find these people and have them find me? And the other thing I'll say, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think we all here on this call can relate to it, is, I'm going to need to get a little side hustle going to support my side hustle for the time being. Right. So like, we all kind of did health coaching on the side and kept our day jobs until we were ready to go. I think there's something really important about have some kind of little paycheck coming in while you're in the early, very difficult stages. Clients literally don't emerge out of thin air.
Yeah. It takes time to build.
Yeah. So but I think if you're not looking at it objectively,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a real power in looking at it objectively, this exercise of just, my number was 4, I got 0. What's my next step?
Yeah, exactly. And just to know, I mean, sometimes it's just to understand the ramp up period. I always, encourage people to start really conservatively. Like maybe just start with, I'm going to get 1 client a month, and that can be hard in itself.
Right.
So you see like, okay, I get 1 client a month, maybe every other month. And then what is the period to which I'm profitable? Maybe it's 2 years. I mean, that's completely reasonable for a small business. 3, 4, 5. I mean, it's different, but at least you're planning, you're putting the thought behind it. Well, how am I going to support myself for those 3 years while I'm not making any money? I need to have other income. And I think a lot of people are sort of thrown amongst the sharks, and they haven't thought through this. And then they get to a point where they're out of money and frustrated, and they have to leave it completely. And so I don't want people to have to give up on, their business because they just didn't do some initial planning.
Yeah. We talk about, patience a lot, and the last couple master classes, so Erin and I work for a health coaching school. And one of the things we did pre-COVID was we would do these annual master classes. They were like retreats, okay, like a long weekend, like a 4-day weekend. And one of the things we covered was this, a little bit of kind of back of the napkin, little spreadsheet on how you're going to back into what we would call your number. What do you really need to make a go at this? And we've said, and I have seen this in every business venture I've ever gone into, whether it was opening my gym, starting a new territory back in the day when I was because I used to be in more of an outside sales, and my territory changed a couple times where I was the new girl on the block. There's something about the 3-year mark. That's a game changer, you know? So take a deep breath and relax a minute. It's not that there aren't folks that kind of need to make this work now.
Yeah.
I have seen folks take a big leap. They're super excited and passionate about going, and they just jump in, all guns blaring, and things don't go as expected. And they end up having to backtrack and kind of get back into kind of the old job or the old world for a bit. So what I hate to see is when people give up entirely, because Erin has told her story about how she was one step in, one step out, one step, this happens a lot where you advance forward and you kind of need to back up a little bit, but then you can advance forward again. The idea is taking stock of what you learned by making that choice. What didn't work?
Yeah.
Okay. So that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What didn't I know going into that I know now that I can now use for like my next attempt to kind of like make my way out. But this notion that, it's like this happens in real estate, right? This happens in a lot of new businesses where it takes like your first year. Here's the thing. And I would love your opinion on this with health coaching. If this right now is a side hustle, you don't have to invest in an office. You don't need a ton of equipment. You need like a laptop, a phone, maybe a little bit of marketing money, and you graduated from a course. Like to actually be profitable doesn't take that long. Whether you're actually supporting yourself with that profit,
right?
That's a different story, right?
Yeah.
So your second year, you're making more money. You've probably brought in, if you're doing this right, double the clients that you had your first year. In some cases more. But if you've been consistent in putting out content and sharing your message and being authentic and getting out there, there's something about that 3rd year mark where momentum, it just snowballs, right? So, I mean, if you just think in terms of numbers, if you start with 1 client, you get a double with 2 clients, but your next double's 4 clients, right? So it builds momentum wise. And in your 3rd year, it's an entirely different game. And if you can, I think I love the idea of forecasting. This is why I want to kind of to give people this kind of forward look on what it is they're really reaching for.
Yeah.
And then being able to use that to be like, okay, I got to that forecast from a reasonable place. It's not just, this is where I think I'm going to be in 3 years. How are you arriving at that number?
Yeah. It's slowly building over time, and you can see that as you go through the months. And I think it is inspiring. Like you're saying, you could do a 3-year forecast, and it's going to change, but you can put it on paper, and you can see in year 3 when you have maybe 8 clients a month and you're killing it, and you have this wonderful, healthy business, and it gives you something to work towards. You're like, all I have to do is just keep trucking and keep working towards getting, that additional client, that marginal client. And I can be there in 3 years, 4 years, I think it gives you motivation.
And I'll tell you, I think Erin can relate to this too. For folks listening, when you mention like 8 clients, if you're charging the right amount, somewhere between 8 and 12 clients, that is a full-time job for a health coach at any given time, right? Unless you're running groups or something. But you don't have to have 50 individual clients running.
No.
To be successful and full time in this. I mean, Erin learned the hard way. She and I interviewed each other a couple months ago, and she was saying like she just had a banner year as far as clients wise, right, Erin? But boy, she oversold herself. She's like, it wasn't fun, to be completely honest, right?
Yeah, well, and that kind of thing can happen. This probably sounds like it probably sounds kind of crazy to say, but that kind of thing can happen when you're not effectively forecasting too. That's the unspoken sort of a flip side of that coin. And and honestly, a big part of it comes from scarcity. I better take all these clients. If I had my arms more around what my goals were, if I'd really sat down and zoomed out and looked at my, year, what do I really need? I would have realized that overwhelming myself with that many clients wasn't financially necessary. The trade, so there's on both sides of on either end of the spectrum and everywhere in between, whether you're new or you've been at it for a while, I can see the benefit in forecasting.
Yeah.
It's just there's an intentionalness, there's an
Yes.
intentionality behind it, and we can't really. It feels fun to fly by the seat of your pants sometimes for some of us,
Yeah.
but it only that can only work for so long.
Yeah. And I think you're hitting on something good here. Like if you had done a forecast and seen like, okay, let's say I get up to 15 clients a month and that's all I'm looking at are clients. And you're like, 15 clients a month, that's insane. Like, I don't want to take 15 clients a month. So then you might start thinking like, are there other service lines I can add in? Can I develop a program? Can I start offering group programs? Can I get some passive income going? Let's start plugging those in and see, okay, if I take the time to develop this course, what's that revenue stream going to look like? Oh, that looks great. And that's not my time every day meeting with the client. So that makes me feel better, so you can it's just really a framework to think through scenarios, if nothing else.
That's another good example of how this kind of blurs the line between business coaching in a way.
Yeah.
Because if you imagine, well, my ideal client roster is 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you think through, you get to your 10, and then maybe you got 11 or 12, and you start to think, what if I get 15? What if I get 20? Do I want 15 or 20? Can I manage it? Let me look at my calendar and see if there's possible for me to manage 15 or 20 high ticket one-on-one clients. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe something has to shift, or maybe it isn't. You know what I should do is I should build a small group program that I can roll these people in and charge a medium ticket, so you can start thinking through programming. I just feel like we put these things in silos. Programming goes here, money goes here, getting clients, marketing goes there. And it really doesn't work that way. It's very much all in flow.
Yeah, it's holistic, just like treating health. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so Erin's path was very one-on-one in the beginning and then grudgingly put together a group program, because she was kind of like, I don't really see, whereas mine was a little bit different. I was living in a state where one-on-one coaching was scary to me from the state law perspective. I was concerned about getting into trouble for doing individual, nutrition coaching kind of thing. I eventually learned, look, as long as I'm not out with this mega long story short, it turned out I was fine doing individual coaching, but it scared me off a little bit. And I started with group coaching.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I had individual clients. I did. And those were the organic ones. I wasn't marketing for that. And I started in a gym. I was a health coach and then eventually opened a gym. That was my bridge. That was my, like, what can I do now to kind of bridge this for myself so I can get out of okay. So, and group coaching for the gym I was in worked really well because it was a CrossFit gym, very group community oriented, worked really well. So, I had my one-on-one clients, but the group side really grew. And was it great coaching? No. Right. Because you just can't give people individual attention in a group, but it created a bridge for me as well. It was something different, and then I eventually I still do groups, but it allowed me to actually pick up more individual clients as a result as well. So there's ways that you can, as you're doing your forecasting, figuring out, to your point, where can I find the revenue stream I need?
Yeah.
While keeping expenses reasonable. Here's the other thing, right? How can I bring in more income without having to spend more?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's the other thing to consider. So the term you used of taking a much more holistic approach and rolling up into what you're actually taking home, your revenue, and being able to balance all that stuff. So how much of what you do is just books relative to kind of this thought process? And do you do a little bit of coaching with what you're doing? Yeah.
Yeah. We do kind of everything up to tax prep. So we work with clients to set up their books. So we train them on QuickBooks. We're very customized in our approach. We like to find a bookkeeping process that works for the client. It's not like one system fits all. We stay away from that because everyone's different in how they manage their finances. So we work on that. We also work on tweaking people's books. They're having issues. They need to troubleshoot. They've neglected it for a while. They want a CPA review. So we do a lot of that. And then we do these forecasts. We call them forecasting boot camps. So we work with clients to develop a forecast for them that they can use. And we use this really cool software called Sift. So they have this sort of living document that they can come in and tweak and plug in scenarios really easily. Like, I want to hire 2 people, or I want to add this service, and they can see how it affects the forecast. So we're kind of just creating this tool for them that they can use going forward.
Amazing.
Boot camp.
Is Sift,
Boot camp. That's cool.
yeah. Is Sift a tool? Is that your tool, or is that a readily available tool that's online?
Yeah, I use a software called Sift. And so anyone can use that software if they want to create a forecast. But we kind of guide our clients through the process, you know, asking them all the questions, and we create the forecast, we plug everything in, and then we present the forecast and we tweak it with the client. And then they can go forward and use that, you know, forecast within the software going forward. Yeah.
Very nice.
Cool.
Wow. So how do you work with people? Do you work with them one-on-one, or you do?
Yeah,
do
a
you get to
mix.
know their businesses?
We have I'm sorry.
Do you get to know their businesses to a certain degree?
Yeah, we do. So we have a course. So we have a digital course for new business owners that completely want to DIY and you know, self-paced learning. But we also do a lot of one-on-one work. So you know, we work with the clients, like I said, to set up their books, and we always spend time getting to know their business in that process. And then we have these clients that kind of come back, you know, they come back regularly. So they'll, you know, they want to still do the books themselves, but they need guidance from time to time, or they're going to go get a loan, or they want to get a home loan, or, you know, something has changed in their business. They don't know how to account for it. So we have, you know, kind of our regular clients that come back as needed. So we know their businesses very well because we've spent a lot of time in the books. And anytime I'm going to work with a client, I spend a lot of time in their books before that's kind of my way. It's like my diagnostic lab testing, you know, intake form. I can see a lot from their books. I can see how they've accounted for everything, can see errors. I can see, you know, all the transactions. So I get a really clear picture of at least like how their numbers look before I work with them.
So I have a question. Is you're walking through like a forecasting, I have to imagine when you're making forecasts, some of that is going to include some assumptions being made, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about that, as far as how you might work with someone to arrive at an assumption that makes sense. Because I can see those of us that tend to be Pollyannas and be like, I'm going to have my 10 clients a month and blah, blah, blah. And then you have those that are like, probably not going to have any clients. Like, total pessimistic. Right. Versus what's really kind of reasonable and realistic. And the same thing goes for making contingency plans. Like, we don't want people to assume the sky is going to fall, but from a forecasting perspective, what tend to be common challenges or headwinds, things that tend to come up, you know, can you speak to that a little bit about, if you're going to do a forecast, you know, how should you view the assumptions you're making, and what things that you might want to add to that forecast, just so that, you know, you've got some buffer, I guess, and some wiggle room. Yeah,
absolutely. So if we're working with someone that's an established business, we always start with historical data. And there's even a feature in the software you can sort of like project forward, starting with like historical numbers from last year. So you can at least start to see like, what has your growth percentage been? That gives you some data. And that we also want to answer questions about your income. We don't want to just take your numbers from last year and plug them in, but at least maybe we could see like every month you grew 2%. And that was a pretty steady growth rate on this one service line. So then we might do that going forward. And then I would ask the business owner questions like, are you going to do any marketing pushes? Is anything going to change in the way you promote this service? You know, what's your capacity? How many can you take? You know, so we're talking through all of these scenarios that might change the numbers going forward. And then we would kind of plug that in. So it's nice to have a starting place, and then you're tweaking based on assumptions, and those come from the business owner. I mean, the business owner is usually in touch with, you know, what they think is going to happen. And then we step in and we bring some experience, right? So I've seen thousands of sets of books. You know, I've worked with like 200 clients in my time of doing this. So I've seen, you know, what's common as far as how people grow, and, you know, and every business is different. So we keep in mind what's going on with that specific business. But sometimes we have a guide for, both the income and how the cost structure plays out. So we can bring our experience in, different types of expenses we've seen or how those expenses change. So that's why I think it's helpful. Like, it's great to do your own forecast. It's also helpful to get a little expertise just to kind of bring some of that experience in.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a nice touch, actually, to have some of that sort of legacy data of
Yeah.
like some trends that you see. And so like if you have a client who seems to be spending an exorbitant amount on what's called web hosting, and
Mm-hmm.
that might be a flag for you, like, gee, why are you spending $250 a month on web hosting? It usually only costs $8.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess in that way, like, I like this because I'm going to go back to this idea of like the silos. I feel like we can put the money stuff into its own little category and feel like we have to myopically focus on it. But actually there's tendrils that kind of come in and out of paying attention to money. And I love that you have the experience of working with over 200 clients to have the predictability of it. That's one of my favorite things about health coaching is, after you've worked with a certain number of clients, you get a little predictability of what you're going to see with these clients. And that makes it a lot easier. And you feel like you're kind of in your zone.
Yes.
But I can see how that's helpful for your clients, for you to bring that knowledge.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll be preparing a forecast and I'll just like hop into some other books that are in the similar industry and just kind of think through like, well, did we think about that person has that expense, or their expenses really ramped up in the summer, or, I can kind of use that as a guide and then make sure I ask the business owner about it. Like, have we thought about this? Do you think you're going to incur this? So it's helpful.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's one of the things that keeps coming up every time we have a conversation around money, finance, bookkeeping, and just how distasteful so many people find it.
Yeah.
Everything that comes up at the end of every conversation we've had, I think the resounding message is, to a certain degree, there's a tremendous amount of freedom and confidence that comes from at least understanding where you are. So I think so many people don't want to go down this road because they're afraid of the answer.
Yeah.
But regardless of how bad the stinking answer might be, at least you know where you're at.
Yeah.
So that you can make plans to
Mm-hmm.
kind of move forward. And look, my role at our school is as admissions director, and the more than half of the people I talk to are people coming from outside the industry looking to move into this, or people that are in the industry, but who I'm getting a lot of conversations with are nurses right now. People that tons and tons. And I always had quite a few prior to the pandemic. Now with COVID, I think there's a lot of people in the healthcare field, nurses in particular, that are just done, that the entire system is broken and they just want to get outside of it. They're like, I'm kind of done, but they've worked in this realm for so long where their paycheck was taken. Like, this is super scary kind of moving. So anyway, the vast majority of people are coming from some sort of paycheck where they really haven't had to pay it unless they're of that mind. Don't get me wrong. There are those that, contribute as much as they probably can to their 401k, and they're on it. They balance their checkbook every month. I mean, those people exist. It's not the majority now, right? It's definitely a minority. So you've got all these people that have had their finances on autopilot for so long. Someone else is paying the bills. Someone else is taking care of your taxes for the most part. I don't know about you, but like all my major bills are kind of on auto pay. Like I just am not, we're disengaged from it now. So the scary thing is, oh my gosh, this is going to be a whole new world.
Yeah.
Now that I'm sort of moving into this realm. And so I guess I just want to hear from you some words of encouragement of, I've been doing this a while. I've kind of seen everything. Your worst case scenario is right now, financially, you're not in great shape. But the good news is you don't know where to go until you know where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I think is important for people to understand is you could just do a little bit of training, spend a little bit of time, say, learning QuickBooks, learning what your best, your process is for doing your regular bookkeeping. My typical time spent with a new client is 2 hours. We do 2 hours worth of training and they're off to the races. Like, and it might change a little if it was a more complex business, but your average business just needs 2 hours of training to understand what they need to do financially and keep up with a regular bookkeeping process. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people think like, oh, I have to tackle all these issues. I have to learn all these things. And, it's your specific business. So we just need to teach what you need to know for your business and get your process set up. And then you can coast, Mm-hmm. So it's not that daunting, I guess, is my advice. It's just like probably what you advise your health coaching clients. It's like, let's take some baby steps. Let's just put the intention there and let's start making some changes. We're not going to like overhaul your health overnight. Mm-hmm. Just like we're not going to overhaul, if you have financial reservations, we're just going to start putting some things in place that are going to help you. And there's a lot we can do with the initial setup where it's going to greatly decrease the time you spend bookkeeping. I mean, that's my goal. I want you to spend as little time as possible with your finances, some time, but it's quality time. And we can automate a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. We can get it set up so that you don't have to mess with it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a little time,
Yeah. The parallel between money coaching, let's call it, and health coaching is absolutely mirror image as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'll share a little anecdote. So one of our bookkeeping guests that came on the podcast offered to help me pro bono because I sounded so bewildered on the episode. She's like, I'll take you on as a pro bono client and you can be a case study. I was like, okay.
That's what you want to hear. Case study.
I know. Okay. So she onboarded me. I felt the pertinent discomfort of like learning a new language.
Yeah.
Her patience that she met me with was just like exactly what I needed to make me feel like I had the basic skills to just start this, and all I needed to do was start.
Yeah.
We were using a different software, not QuickBooks, but same idea. Mm-hmm. So I'm categorizing my stuff. I had to do the entire year of 2021, which was a lot. Mm-hmm. I got into the flow. I'm like, okay, I'm categorizing things. Look at me go. And then I hit a roadblock, and then I just wanted to throw in the towel. Mm-hmm. And the roadblock was just that I couldn't get one of my credit cards to import. It was a really important one because most of my business transactions are on that one, and my credit card and the software don't play nice together. Yeah. And then I started ghosting on my calls with her because I felt ashamed.
Oh no!
Because I felt, and what's so funny is I have clients that do that with me. Yeah. They feel ashamed. I don't want to talk to Erin because I ate all the Valentine's candies or whatever.
Right,
it's like,
right.
No, like this is a safe container, but the parallel is so spot on. It's this discomfort. I don't know enough. I'm stupid about this. I'll never get it. I'm not cut out for it. It's alarming how similar it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've been thinking about that all week too, like the comparisons. And yeah,
Well, the patience,
you're right.
The patience that's required. I mean, I don't know what it is. Maybe kind of going back to Laura's point, like we don't learn this in school. Well, we don't learn money in school. We don't learn nutrition in school. So those two things are not really taught in school. Well, I guess they kind of are, the food guides or the pyramid or whatever you've got going. But somehow we think that we should have emerged from the womb knowing biochemistry and finance and without having been taught it. And there's a sense of don't I know this? Well, you were never taught it. You never practiced it.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about too is important. I was actually thinking about this earlier. It's funny that you mention it. That, when you work with health coaching clients, their progress is not linear, right?
Right.
Sometimes they fall off the wagon and they do what they call bad things. And, they don't want to tell you about it. And that is very much how progress works, right? When you're healing with anything, it's not linear. Same thing with finances. People will be really on their books and they're doing it every month and they're reconciling all their accounts. And then all of a sudden, like something happens, like we said, a roadblock, and they're just like, you know what, forget it. My husband was actually talking about this because he was doing his books for his real estate company. And he ran into some problem and then he was like, forget it. Like, I don't want to do my books. And then he didn't touch them for several months, and then I got to fix it. But it's not linear. You just keep setting the intention back that, okay, maybe I'll reach out, get a little bit of support on this one item. I'm feeling uncomfortable about it. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to give myself some positive self-reinforcement. It would be good for me to talk with someone about it, see if I can tackle it, and then I'll get back on track. You're just being very patient with yourself, just like I'm sure you advise your coaching clients, right? Like, you don't have to beat yourself up about this. It's, it's okay. Like, I'll just get back on the wagon and try again.
Yeah. Do you know what is different though? One thing that is different, because it's not a perfect parallel. One thing that is different is that it's tedious.
Yeah, it is very tedious.
Is it possible to outsource that bit?
Yeah, bookkeeping or the tedious,
like the
categorizing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can hire a bookkeeping firm to take care of that for you, and then what you're responsible for is just looking at the reports. I mean, even if you have a bookkeeper, I always advise that a business owner just even spends 5 minutes looking at the reports. I know they don't really want to do it, and I have plenty of business owners that never ever look at the reports. But it's really helpful information. It's like looking at lab tests when you're working with the client, right? You want to see what came out on those lab tests so that you have some starting point for making your plan for them. So again, it's nobody really enjoys it, but I do see when business owners start to connect a little more with what they're getting out of the reports, like they actually understand how to interpret it. They sort of like this sort of light shines, it's like, I have clarity. I understand what's going on in my business. And I kind of enjoy this now because I can see like, wow, I had an all-star month of sales last month. Why did that happen? And oh my gosh, look, these expenses have been going on that I didn't even know were happening. I have all these subscriptions and a couple of them I don't even use. And so they're starting to really get useful information out of these reports. And then they feel like they can make decisions going forward in a more informed place. So I think once that sort of clicks, it's like, okay, yeah, this is tedious, but maybe you outsource the bookkeeping piece, and then you're looking at your report, spending a little time with it. And
I can see the benefit. I can see the benefit in the individual business owner spending some time on the tedious act of transaction by transaction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we want to skip over that part. I don't think that's the word, because for some of the things you mentioned, I thought as you were talking, it's like, yeah, I had that experience. I had the experience of like a banner month where it was just like income. I was like, yeah, that was a great month. I forgot about that month.
Yeah.
And then subscriptions, so many just random charges that are occurring monthly on my Visa that I was just paying without looking at.
Yeah.
And oops, years of that. Glad I saw that so I could, catch it. So I think there's value in the business owner doing that tedious work just to say you did and connect to it, and then maybe at some point handing it off once you've got your handle.
I mean, there's a point where you need to outsource. You don't need to be doing every activity in your business, especially as you've grown to a certain size. And bookkeeping is one of those. Like, I find bookkeeping tedious, and I do it for a living, but I'm way more interested in what's coming out of the reports and how we make decisions for the business. But obviously bookkeeping is essential, and absolutely outsource it when you're ready. I'm a big proponent of that. But still be connected to your reports and still have a forecast, so that you can start like plugging in all these super cool scenarios that you want to do down the line and seeing if you can afford to do so,
Yeah. So what, kind of switching gears a little bit from kind of folks that are relatively new, or, hey, when do I know it's okay to leave my job, to folks who they're supporting themselves, but they're ready to grow, and for many people, in order to grow, they got to invest. I was having a conversation. We did a webinar with our founder, Mark Sisson, who's just the quintessential wellness health entrepreneur, right? And this is a man that has invested in many things, took a lot of risks, and, came out on the other side very successful. But he'll be the first one to tell you he's had some failures too.
Yeah.
But from a standpoint of forecasting, maybe, so bookkeeping and forecasting, what, if anything, is different for folks that are sort of in that stage,
already fully established?
Yeah. Fully established. And now it's like, hey, in order for me to grow, I either need to hire someone, or I need to, some folks might have an interest in we've seen this. We've interviewed several coaches that actually invested in a brick and mortar location kind of thing and those kind of investments. So let's say you've got someone who's got an established full-time coaching practice, but they want, they're ready to kind of grow beyond where they're at.
Yeah.
What might be different that they need to consider, or how do you work with those folks to kind of help them make these decisions as to when is the right time and how do you forecast for that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So real example, I was just working with two designers and they're new in business, but they have a lot of experience in the industry. So they're going to ramp up really fast. They're expecting $1 million in income this year, which is very impressive. And they were just like, we don't understand anything about how this is going to play out. Like, how is our cash flow going to go? Like, when are we going to collect? When are we going to have that? Like, how is that picture going to look? And then what are the expenses we're going to come across? We want to hire 5 employees out the gate. So what does that cost structure look like? They want to help with payroll taxes, and then they want to offer benefits. So what do the benefits costs look like? What are the things associated with hiring someone? Do we need to work with an employment lawyer or have certain types of insurance like workers' comp? So we're plugging all that in. And then just like you mentioned, they wanted to buy a building down the line. And they're like, when can we do that? So what's cool about the forecast and the forecasting tool I use is you can plug in any scenario. So you can have your base forecast, and then you can just add a scenario like we want to buy a building. So we can plug in the costs associated with that and see how it affects the forecast. So we might plug it in somewhere and see like, ooh, that's not the right time. We don't have the cash flow to support it. So maybe let's bump it 6 months and see if we plug it in there, what happens. And you can delete the assumptions, you can turn them on and off. So it's really kind of like a choose your own adventure framework where you can plug in different things. And so we did a lot of that with them. They were like, you know what, instead of 5 employees, what if we bring on 8 so that we can support more projects? And so then we popped in the wages and the payroll costs and the benefits and all that for those 8 employees to see what their profit would look like. So
I would imagine that. So I'd love to hear more about how this, kind of how you're working with them within this software. Because my guess would be, if you're plugging in, hey, we're doing 8 employees.
Yeah.
And you have to change the assumption of how many projects you might be working on, or what the, or does the tool do that? Is the tool intelligent enough?
It's not intelligent enough.
Okay.
We would just talk through it. So it's like, okay, well, if you're going to bring on 3 extra employees, how many projects do you think those 3 employees could be managing? And they would say something like, well, I think each employee might take 2 projects a month. And this is our average, package for that client. Yeah. So we would plug in the increased income when it was expected to play out. And then we would plug in those costs. There's a lot of like me tweaking things. And also my expertise in like how the tax structure plays out. I had to calculate all the payroll tax and I've seen all the costs that go along with hiring employees, right? Workers' comp and, how much a 401k plan is and things like that. So.
Yeah, because that's another thing to consider then, hey, can I afford to hire someone? Well, there's all these other ancillary costs. So then the question is, do I actually hire this person as an employee, or is this person just 1099?
Yeah.
And sort of how does that change the scenario? And then factoring in, okay, so if these activities are off my plate, then the assumption then is that I'm going to be working with more clients, doing more revenue producing activities, and having a conversation about holding yourself accountable to, will the tool kind of help you determine, this is how much more income and revenue you need to make to offset these costs just to keep.
Yeah, because you'll see how your profit gets affected. So if you pop in all these costs, you would see like, okay, with no change in revenue, our profit is only $1,000 a month. So we need to increase that. And you can play with it a lot. So then we'll just add an assumption that's like, okay, we'll take 2 more projects each month. Now that I'm a dedicated person to bringing in business, doing BD. So let's see what that does. And so then you plug in that increase and that can be just an add-on assumption, 2 more projects. You can turn it on and off. So that's what's really cool. I vetted 15 different forecasting softwares, and this one by far was the best. And I love how you can just like turn on and off these assumptions and just kind of move them around. You could just change the date if you're like, okay, what happens if we do this next year? So I think that kind of lights up people because they're like, oh, this is so cool. Like, look, I could totally afford to buy this building next year. And that makes me really excited. And now I'm super driven to get there,
Yeah.
So,
Something about being able to like visualize it, actually see it.
Right.
I
yes.
think that just makes it so tangible.
Yes.
I can see why people would really geek out on that. In fact, I might even like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Well, you know what's cool is that we talk to health coaching clients about the presence of being present and
Mhm.
mindful about where you are, but then being able to vision the future, right? And think through kind of what some of the possibilities are. And I think until when you see it on paper like that,
Yeah.
I just think it creates such a clear idea of this is what I want, right? I want to be able to do these things or hire this person or what have you.
Mhm.
And in order to do that, I need to make these assumptions true, right? These other assumptions true.
Yeah.
And so now you know your goal,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
If the goal is I need 2 more projects a month, awesome.
Mhm.
Let's back into kind of how you're going to get there. And it just allows for a much more productive conversation
Yes.
instead of constantly spinning your wheels about the what ifs,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. That's what I call it. I call it a financial visualization. It's like, it's your goals in financial form, so
Yeah.
that you can see when it can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you find your clients? Like, how do this is something that comes up a lot of times with, whether it's new coaches or established coaches that are looking to expand, I mean, from how do people find you from the standpoint of kind of how you market and how you run your business?
Yeah.
How is that?
I get a lot of clients from QuickBooks website. So people go to search for help on the QuickBooks website and they come to me. A lot of word of mouth now that I have enough clients, and they'll tell other business owners. And that's huge, I think, in the accounting space, because you want like a trusted, you want a recommendation before you go to work with an accountant. Where else do I get clients from? Partnerships. So, other tax accountants will refer me. They want the books to be clean before they prepare the taxes. So I have a lot of tax accountants that will refer me clients. Those are the 3 main areas. And then I'm working on other areas now. I've been on TikTok and growing well there. So I didn't think I wanted to do TikTok, but it's like my, highest growth platform now. So I'm getting some clients off that now, which is pretty cool.
Wow. TikTok is just
Are you like lip syncing?
an enigma to me.
I have some lip syncing. I've had a little fun with it, but a lot of it's just me like talking on a small business topic or a tax topic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I had in my mind, I made this big assumption that maybe like LinkedIn or something like that, but TikTok, well, I mean, the word of mouth and referrals, after you've been doing this a while and you work with enough people, that will likely become the biggest driver,
Yeah.
And I didn't know QuickBooks had a kind of referral thing on their website.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We're listed as pro advisors. So you have to do some trainings, and I did the advanced training. So it kind of bumps you up in that algorithm. So I'm kind of listed at the top now that I've done the advanced training. But yeah.
Well, I mean, there's more and more services like that are coming out for holistic health practitioners, where, companies that are coming to market as a database where people can search for you.
Yeah.
My only feeling with a lot of these is many of them are not well known. So they have to have pretty great like SEO and a way of marketing. Like, so if somebody Googles, whatever it is they need help with, that they're popping up as a place to go, as a resource to find someone to sort of meet that need. QuickBooks is obvious. I mean, everybody's heard of it, Yeah.
The only problem with QuickBooks, I'll say for me, is it's not necessarily my target. I work with creative service providers.
Yeah.
So I get everybody coming in, and I have to sift through a lot of it because a lot of those clients aren't a fit. So I've, recently kind of branched out in my marketing, trying to do, podcasts and speaking engagements and in social media and things like that to target our specific client.
Yeah.
And that's kind of helped refine everything for me.
That's why TikTok might actually make sense for you if that's like your target, the creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some great engagement. I was really skeptical about it, but people are asking me a lot of questions and really, engaged in what I'm posting. So, it's another option.
Yeah. And it's probably not saturated yet for your.
It's not. There's like no accountants on there. Well, accountant is a different term on TikTok. We'll not get into that. But there are not a lot of bookkeepers or tax professionals on TikTok. So it is sort of a wide open space.
Very nice. Well, I appreciate it. I love talking about money, believe it or not, with experts in it.
Awesome.
Because I think it calms it down a little.
Yes.
Makes it feel gettable. So I appreciate everything you shared with us today. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You got it. So where can people find you if they want to kind of follow up with you? Because to kind of circle back to what we said earlier, for many people that enter into the health coaching realm, business generally is kind of not their wheelhouse. It's not entirely true, but generally, and bookkeeping and finance even more so. So, we've had several guests on our podcast because Erin and I both know that this is a weakness of our own. And we see it as something health coaches really need to get their arms around so that they can move forward with confidence. So we're hoping our listeners are taking advantage of all these interviews and reaching out to people and finding the right person to kind of help them. So, let us know where our listeners can find you if they want to kind of find out more.
Yeah. My website is beamfinancialgroup.com. You can access the courses if you want to sign up for the QuickBooks Basics course. That's there. And we have a discount for listeners, which is just courses 15 at checkout. You can enter that 15% off. But all my services are outlined there. Also on social media. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok, and YouTube as Beam Financial Group. So I love questions. If anybody wants to shoot, tax questions, bookkeeping questions, always happy to answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.